So Donald Trump was recently in New Hampshire and he gave one of his trademark, meandering, incoherent speeches. And friends, his rapidly increasing cognitive decline was on full display. I mean, he ran through the Trump greatest hits. He praised authoritarians, he demeaned and insulted half the country, he indulged in xenophobia and religious bigotry, he struggled with history and geography and facts and letters, like initials, letters, the alphabet. And then he dusted off a piece of advice for his followers, which screwed him in the last election, and I think may very well screw him in this one. But before we unpack all that, if you haven't yet, please hit that like, subscribe, and the alert bell. Okay, so here is your warning to brace yourselves. This is maximum Trump territory. We have several clips to play, and I understand it might be a torturous experience, but as I've said in previous videos, I think we have an obligation to keep our eye on Donald Trump, whether we like it or not. He's the Republican frontrunner. He may very well be the next president of the United States. And it's important for all of us to remind ourselves and try to remind others that this man is eminently disqualified for the presidency and he needs to be as far from the White House as possible. So with that in mind, we have several clips to play. We're going to unpack them all together.
Had a lot of the horrible things. The world is exploding. If you take a look, I mean, the whole world is exploding. You know, I was very honored as a man, Viktor Orban. Did anyone ever hear of him? He's probably like one of the strongest leaders anywhere in the world. And he's the leader of, right? He's the leader of Turkey, fronts on both Russia.
Okay, so Viktor Orban is not the leader of Turkey. That's Erdogan. Okay, Viktor Orban is the leader of Hungary. Okay, Orban, Hungary, Erdogan, Turkey. Now, they're both right-wing authoritarians. They both have like warm relationships with Trump. Viktor Orban was actually invited in 2022 to speak at CPAC, which is like the largest conservative, political conference in the United States. Many actual Republican politicians were there. And he is seen by many Republican politicians and right-wing thought leaders as kind of like the blueprint for what they want in the United States. Absolutely deranged. But again, Donald Trump's praise of right-wing authoritarians across the ocean doesn't just end there. And it didn't end there at the speech.
And it never would have happened with Putin, or it wouldn't have happened. President Xi would have never done it. Kim Jong-un of North Korea has tremendous nuclear capability. Everybody felt safe when I was president. I got along with him. You would have had a nuclear war if crooked Hillary was there.
So again, he's talking about Xi Jinping of China. He's talking about Vladimir Putin of Russia. He's talking about Kim Jong-un of North Korea. Again, these really dangerous authoritarian leaders whom he constantly praises as being like strong, inspiring, brilliant leaders. And he says he gets along with them, right? I mean, I understand having some sort of sobering, assessment of your adversaries, right? Not taking them for granted, not like taking them seriously when and where they need it. But he gives them effuse praise. He flatters them. He compliments them, not just to their face as a matter of diplomacy, but to his own followers. I mean, he clearly reveres how much despotic control these men have over their constituents. Now, with that in mind, this is how he speaks about his own fellow Americans who just simply disagree with him politically.
Horrible people, and they're destroying our country. I talk about threats from within and threats from outside. The threats from within, in my opinion, are far more dangerous than the threats of China and Russia.
So he's talking about Democrats there. He's talking about the majority of the country who happen to disagree with him politically. That's what he thinks, okay? He'll wax poetic and write love letters about foreign adversaries. Again, Viktor Orban and Erdogan, I guess they're technically not adversaries, but they're right-wing authoritarian figures that we don't like and shouldn't like, right? Then Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping, who are foreign adversaries, and Kim Jong-un, who is also an adversary as well. Like, if only he would think or talk about his fellow Americans the way he talks about some of the worst people in the world. And then just imagine if President Biden, just spoke that cavalierly, not about a subset of Republicans, but just about anybody who disagrees with him politically. When President Biden gives a speech and he criticizes so-called MAGA Republicans, he frames it. He throws in like 43 disclaimers at the beginning and at the end, how it's not all Republicans, not even a majority of Republicans. I like Republicans. I get along with Republicans. If he offers any criticism of these deranged authoritarian Republicans within the Republican Party, he has to couch it with a gazillion disclaimers. Donald Trump doesn't have to do that. Donald Trump gets to say whatever he wants about whomever he wants, whatever happens to cross his mind at the moment, and he's given a free pass, certainly by his own cult and his own party and right-wing media, obviously, but I would argue even mainstream media. Mainstream media makes more of a big deal about President Biden occasionally criticizing a certain subset of Republicans than they do about Donald Trump just tarring and feathering 50 to 60% of the country. It's disgusting. Now we have the other aspects of Donald Trump's speech in which he engages in xenophobia and religious bigotry. Pay attention.
The United States. I don't think a lot of good things are going to happen. And I will implement strong ideological screening of all immigrants. If you hate America, if you want to abolish Israel, if you don't like our religion, which a lot of them don't, if you sympathize with jihadists, then we don't want you in our country and you are not getting in. Right?
So Donald Trump says he's going to ideologically screen immigrants. Okay, that's kind of creepy, right? What ideology? And then he goes on to say, basically, if you're pro-Israel, or if you are Christian or Judeo-Christian, then we'll let you in. If you don't subscribe to those, if you don't like our religion. By the way, what is our religion? The United States doesn't have an official religion. One of the things that we were supposed to be founded on, and that has been a matter of law ever since, is this notion of religious liberty and religious pluralism. You don't have to be a Christian or Jewish or Muslim or, whatever, Hindu. You can be atheist, you can be agnostic, or whatever you believe in. You can be a Scientologist, right? There's a reason Tom Cruise is in the United States. Actually, I think he resides in London now, but he's still an American citizen. We're supposed to be tolerant of religion, period, or a lack of religion. And Donald Trump is saying, listen, if you don't like our religion, I'm not going to let you in. Super creepy and super unconstitutional. But wait, there's more.
Mumbling, didn't know where the hell he was. And then CNN, I watched CNN to see, I like to see what they do. They said that was one of the greatest speeches since FDR. FDR was a great speaker, right? He was a great speaker. He sat because of a situation, but he was an elegant, beautiful, elegant, and eloquent. That he was a great speaker, and they show him speaking, and rah, rah, America will be great. We were attacked today. You have to understand, now they showed this guy who can't put together two sentences, and they say, that's one of the finest State of the Union addresses since FDR.
So, whatever you want to say about President Biden's rhetorical prowess, and certainly President Biden is not Bill Clinton, he's not Barack Obama. There's plenty to criticize there in terms of his rhetorical prowess. But Donald Trump is hardly a gifted public speaker. Clearly he's charismatic. Clearly he has a cult of tens of millions of people. But in terms of the classical rhetorical style that Trump is referencing, like FDR, well, he doesn't qualify for that either. And Joe Biden, when he's at his best, can deliver a speech infinitely greater and with infinitely greater sophistication than Donald Trump. There's no contest there. And as we've seen for the past several weeks, Trump is as prone to gaffes and malapropers and malapropisms as anybody, okay? But I'll also point out, I'm talking about FDR sitting. He sat a lot. It's because he had polio. He literally couldn't stand. And you would know that, Donald, if you knew history. But wait, there's more still.
On our business, why are you doing that? He said, Macron, nice guy. Look, he's for France. I'm for us. I'm for us. You know how you spell us, right? You spell us, U.S. I just picked that up. Has anyone ever thought of that before? I just picked that up. A couple of days I'm reading, and it said us. And I said, if you think about it, us equals U.S. Isn't that? Now, if we say something genius, they'll never say it. We get 25, 30, 40, 50, 80,000, 100,000 people to speeches. They'd never.
So Donald Trump, very stable genius that he is, thinks it's a stroke of genius to notice that the initials for the United States, U.S., also spell us. Like, he just now put that together. He's the first person. He thinks this is proprietary knowledge. This is innovative.
So it just occurred to me the other day when I was doing the alphabet, I had my red crayon. It was a perfect record. And believe me, nobody knows red crayons better than me. I had my red crayon, and Melania said, listen, Donald, you have to do the U, you have to do the S. And then I thought, U.S., us, United States.
It's absurd. I mean, it's just absolute. Just imagine what Republicans and the right-wing conservative thought leaders, just anybody, would think if President Biden ever said something so utterly facile. It would get wall-to-wall coverage. Okay. Now, as ridiculous as that sounds, and as it suggests that Trump is battling with literacy, and good for him. I mean, we support literacy. Okay, and if he's struggling with it, people do. Perfectly fair. But then the question becomes: is that the worst of it? Is that the worst part of Donald Trump's speech? Depends on your point of view. Because if you are a Republican or if you're conservative and you want to win the 2024 election, which I hope you lose, but if you want to win, then this is probably the worst part of the speech.
So we have to be careful. You got to get out there and you got to watch those voters. You don't have to vote. Don't worry about voting. The voting, we got plenty of votes. You got to watch election. So we have to be.
So in case you missed that, I'm going to play it one more time. He says you need to watch the voters, but take care of what he tells his supporters that they don't have to do.
Careful. You got to get out there and you got to watch those voters. You don't have to vote. Don't worry about voting. The voting, we got plenty of votes.
You don't have to vote. We got plenty of votes. Don't worry about voting. I mean, listen, it's a bold electoral strategy. He used it in 2020. And he said, don't worry about mail-in ballots or mail-in voting or absentee ballots. He said that basically he actively suppressed the turnout for Republicans using those perfectly legitimate methods. This is the stupid thing. This is the thing that kills me. Republicans are convinced that they can't win free and fair elections. We've discussed it in previous videos. You have Donald Trump, you have Lindsey Graham, you have Republican attorneys, you have Republican state election officials and others as well, essentially making the case, listen, if voter turnout is maximized, we're going to lose elections. That's what they think, okay? Now, I would argue that they're more competitive than they give themselves credit for, but I digress. You have Donald Trump for some stupid reason, and he did it in the 2020 election, telling people not to vote. Just don't vote. I have no idea. I have no idea why he would say that, which leads me to the next point. Much is being made by Republican propagandists about President Biden's cognitive faculties. And as I've said in previous videos, to be completely candid, Joe Biden's 80 years old. He is clearly less cognitively sharp than he was in 2012, right? When he was running for re-election with President Obama against Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan. That debate that Biden had with Paul Ryan, who was a young Paul Ryan wasn't just a young guy in great shape. He was actually really, really sharp. He's a policy nerd. And Joe Biden cleaned his clock. Is Joe Biden that guy today? No, probably not. He is clearly less rhetorically proficient. He stutters. He misspeaks. But we also have compelling reporting, not just from his own staff and not just from Democrats, but also Republicans, including Kevin McCarthy, of all people, that actually Joe Biden's pretty sharp and engaged and curious. Mark Milley, a longstanding, military officer. He was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He worked for Trump and Biden. He said, yeah, Biden's sharp. He's engaged. He knows his stuff. So clearly, again, there's at least an age-related cognitive decline with Biden. And fine, if you want to talk about it, if you want to ask questions about it, fair enough. But what about Trump? Based on the stuff that we've discussed in previous videos, or even the clips in this video,
I think it's a stroke of genius. United States has the letter U, it has the letter S. Us also has the letter U, the letter S. Nobody's ever put this together, believe me. And then we break the news on this, but the fake news media, they're not going to cover it.
He's confused Jeb Bush with George W. Bush. He said that he beat Obama in 2016 as opposed to Hillary Clinton, that he's running against Obama in 2024. He's talked about how windmills kill whales. He talks about nuking hurricanes in order to stop them. If we're going to apply the same rigorous standard, or if we're going to apply a rigorous standard, rather, to President Biden's cognitive faculties, then we are obligated, for the sake of consistency, for the sake of intellectual honesty, to hold Donald Trump to the same standard. And by any reasonable metric, Donald Trump is less cognitively fit for office than President Biden. At least President Biden's smart and experienced. Okay, if he has gaffes and he doesn't speak very well, that's fine, but neither does Trump. And unlike Biden, Trump is not known to be a particularly smart man, especially when it comes to politics. Many of the Republicans who actively worked for him, who pledged themselves to him, have gone on record saying that he's a really stupid guy. He has less going for him in that respect than Biden, and yet the polling doesn't reflect it. Part of the reason why is because Republicans have identified this as a weakness of Biden's, and they have just mercilessly pounded on it. And yet, for whatever reason, those of us on the left, and certainly in the Democratic Party, they don't feel particularly inclined to respond in kind with Trump. Why not? We should be making a big deal about this. Like, listen, okay, Republicans, if this is the standard, fair enough. But does your guy pass the standard? Apparently not. Even Ron DeSantis, who used to be a Trump loyalist, is now saying Donald Trump is just, he's gone. Mentally, he's gone. Unless he has a teleprompter in front of him, he's just not there. He has nothing of substance to say. He has nothing of consistency to say. He misspeaks. He's gaffe prone. He gets the facts wrong. I'm just saying, we need to talk about this. If this is the standard, we have to talk about this. And we also have to pound this mercilessly. We have to make this a talking point. Number one, because it's true. Number two, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Let me know what you think in the comments section.